number. I never expected a routine credit check to uncover a financial betrayal that would shatter my family. At 28 years old, I discovered my parents had secretly taken out a $170,000 loan in my name to fund my brother Derek's extravagant lifestyle. The golden child had always received preferential treatment, but this crossed every boundary imaginable. That devastating revelation forced me to confront not just my family, but my own worth and identity. If you are watching this story, let me know where you are viewing from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I turned this crushing betrayal into the most important victory of my life. Growing up in a middle-class suburban neighborhood outside Detroit, I always knew I held a different place in my family than my brother Derek. My parents, Richard and Linda Bailey, were hard-working people who provided a comfortable life for us. Dad worked as a sales manager at a local automotive parts supplier, while Mom taught third grade at the elementary school. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family, but inside our home, the dynamics told a different story. From our earliest years, Derek was clearly the golden child. 3 years older than me, he was athletic, outgoing, and possessed the kind of natural charm that drew people in. When Derek made the junior varsity football team as a freshman, my parents threw a massive party and invited the entire extended family. When I was named captain of the debate team and qualified for nationals in my sophomore year, I received a quick congratulations at dinner before the conversation shifted back to Derek's upcoming games. This pattern continued throughout our childhood. Derek would bring home C grades and receive praise for his effort, while my straight, as were simply expected. Dad would spend weekends teaching Derek to throw a perfect spiral while I was left to pursue my interests in computers and technology alone in my room. It was not that my parents were cruel or deliberately neglectful toward me. They simply had a blind spot when it came to Derek, who somehow always needed more attention, more resources, and more support. By the time high school graduation approached, the contrast in our treatment had become even more pronounced. For Derek's graduation, my parents gifted him a used but nice car. For mine, I received a laptop for college, admittedly something I needed, but considerably less expensive, and celebrated with much less fanfare. When it came time for college, Derek was encouraged to attend Michigan State, a good school with a substantial tuition. I opted for a local state university with a strong computer science program, working part-time at the campus IT department to help cover my expenses. I took out modest student loans in my own name, determined to minimize debt and become financially independent as quickly as possible. During those university years, I watched from a distance as Derek changed his major 3 times, eventually settling on business administration after 5 years of study. Meanwhile, I completed my degree in 4 years, landing a solid entry-level IT position at a healthcare company before graduation. I felt proud of this accomplishment, having done it largely on my own merits and hard work. My relationship with Derek was complicated. I did not hate him or even actively resent him. He was my brother, and in many ways he was simply playing the role assigned to him by our parents. We maintained a cordial, if not especially close relationship, getting together for holidays and occasional family events. Derek seemed genuinely oblivious to the disparity in our treatment, which made it difficult to hold him personally accountable. After college, I focused intensely on building my career, moving from that entry-level position to increasingly specialized roles in network security. By 28, I had established myself as a respected IT security specialist with a stable income and solid professional reputation. I lived in a modest but comfortable apartment, drove a reliable car that I had paid for myself, and managed to build a small but growing investment portfolio. Financial independence became my proudest achievement. I had created a life that was entirely my own, free from the comparative shadow of my golden child brother. I had my own friends, my own interests, like wilderness photography and a career path that felt meaningful and secure. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was writing my own story, rather than serving as a supporting character in The Derek Show. This sense of stability and growing confidence led me to consider purchasing my first home. The real estate market in my area was reasonable, and with my solid employment history and growing savings, it seemed like the right time to invest in property. I had been carefully building my credit score since college, making all payments on time, and keeping my debt-to-income ratio low. I felt prepared and excited about this next step into full adulthood. What I did not realize was that this decision would unravel a deception that had been quietly undermining everything I had worked for. The mortgage application process would reveal a betrayal so profound that it would force me to reevaluate not just my financial situation, but my entire relationship with my family and my understanding of my place within it. The day that changed everything started ordinarily enough. I had scheduled a meeting with a mortgage broker recommended by a colleague, feeling optimistic about taking this significant step toward home ownership. I had researched neighborhoods, calculated what I could reasonably afford, and saved diligently for a down payment. All my financial ducks were in a row or so, I believed. When the mortgage broker called me back 2 days after our initial consultation, the concern in her voice immediately set off alarm bells. "Bailey, there seems to be an issue with your credit report," she said carefully. "According to this, you have a substantial student loan that is currently in default." "That must be a mistake," I replied confidently. "I only took out about $30,000 in student loans, and they are all current. I have never missed a payment." "Well, this shows a student loan for $170,000 that originated during your sophomore year of college. The loan has been in default for about 8 months now." My stomach dropped. "That is impossible. Can you send me the credit report?" When the document arrived in my email, I stared at it in disbelief. There it was, in black and white, a massive student loan in my name that I had never taken out. My first thought was identity theft, but something about the timing made a sickening feeling creep into my gut. I immediately called the loan servicer, navigating through the automated system until I finally reached a human being. After verifying my identity, I explained the situation. "I need information about this loan. I did not take it out, and I need to understand what happened." The customer service representative was professionally sympathetic. "I can see this loan was originated in 2016 at Collegiate Funding Services. It appears the documents were processed through your university financial aid office. Can you tell me what address was used for correspondence about this loan?" When she read off my parents' home address, the pieces began falling into place with devastating clarity. "I need copies of all the original loan documents," I said, my voice tight with growing anger and disbelief. Several days later, when the documents arrived, I found myself staring at what appeared to be my signature on multiple pages, except I had never signed them. Someone had forged my name, and the painful truth was that I recognized elements of my mother's handwriting in the forgery. Still hoping there was some explanation, other than what seemed increasingly obvious, I drove to my old university and met with a financial aid officer. After explaining my situation, she pulled up my records and confirmed my suspicions. "It looks like this loan was processed with all the proper documentation. The funds were initially directed to your student account, but then most of it was refunded via check to your home address because it far exceeded your tuition and fees." My next call was to my father. I tried to keep my voice steady, but the anger and hurt were becoming impossible to contain. "Dad, I need to ask you something important. Did you or Mom take out a student loan in my name during college?" The long pause before he answered told me everything. "Bailey, you need to understand. Your brother was going through a difficult time. He had that business idea with the luxury car rentals, and it was a real opportunity, but he needed startup capital. So you stole my identity. I felt like I could hardly breathe. We did not think of it that way. We always intended to pay it back before you ever knew about it. Derek was supposed to make the payments once his business took off. As the conversation continued, the full extent of the betrayal emerged. The money had not just gone to Derek's failed business venture, which had collapsed within 18 months. It had also funded his elaborate vineyard wedding to Jessica, provided the down payment on their lakefront home, and paid for his MBA from a prestigious private university after his business failed. "We knew you would be okay," my mother chimed in, having picked up another phone. "You have always been the responsible one, the one who figures things out. Derek needed more help to get established. So you committed fraud and identity theft against your own son." The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. "Do not be so dramatic, Bailey," my father said dismissively. "Families help each other out. We just did what we needed to do at the time." What they had actually done was saddle me with a massive debt that had now gone into default, tanking my credit score and destroying my chance at buying a home. The loan had been in repayment status for several years, with my parents apparently making minimum payments until recently when they had simply stopped. "Why did you stop making payments?" I demanded. Another uncomfortable pause. "Your father lost his job during the downsizing last year," my mother finally admitted. "We had to prioritize our own mortgage, and Derek needed help with his property taxes on the lake house." I hung up the phone, my entire body shaking with rage and betrayal. Everything I had worked for, my careful financial planning and responsible choices, had been undermined by the people who should have protected me. Instead, they had sacrificed my financial future for Derek the golden child, who apparently could never be expected to stand on his own 2 feet. The drive to my parents' house the following Saturday was the longest 2 hours of my life. Every mile that brought me closer to confrontation sent waves of anxiety and anger through my body. I had spent the intervening days in a fog of disbelief and rage, sleeping poorly and functioning on autopilot at work. The only thing that kept me going was the determination to face my family and make them understand the magnitude of what they had done. I had called ahead, telling my parents I needed to discuss the loan situation in person. What I had not told them was that I had asked Derek to be there too. If this betrayal involved the whole family, then the whole family would face it together. The familiar driveway of my childhood home now felt like the entrance to a battlefield. I parked behind Derek's luxury SUV, noting with bitter irony that I was still driving the same reliable sedan I had purchased used 4 years ago. Fiscal responsibility had been my guiding principle, while my identity was being used to fund a lifestyle I could never afford. My mother opened the door before I could knock her face a mask of forced cheerfulness that barely concealed her anxiety. "Bailey, come in. I made your favorite lasagna." The absurdity of her thinking food could smooth over this situation almost made me laugh. Inside, my father sat stiffly in his usual recliner, while Derek and his wife Jessica perched uncomfortably on the couch. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Thanks for coming, everyone," I said, declining to sit. "I wanted us all together because what we need to discuss affects everyone in this room." I placed a folder on the coffee table and began methodically laying out documents, my voice clinical and detached, as though I were presenting evidence at a trial, which in a way I was. "This is the $170,000 student loan taken out in my name without my knowledge or consent. These are the forged documents with my signature that I never signed. This is my current credit report showing the devastating impact of this defaulted loan. And this," I said, placing the final document down, "is the consultation summary from the lawyer I spoke with yesterday about identity theft and financial fraud charges." My mother gasped. My father's face flushed dark red. Derek looked genuinely confused. "What is going on?" Derek asked, looking between our parents and me. "What loan?" "You do not know?" I asked, studying his face carefully. "You do not know that our parents took out a massive loan in my name to fund your failed business, your wedding, your lake house, and your MBA. The shock on Derek's face seemed genuine, which was somehow both a relief and an additional betrayal. My brother might not have been complicit, but he had benefited enormously at my expense without ever questioning where the money came from. "Mom, Dad, is this true?" Derek asked, turning to our parents. My father stood up abruptly. "We did what we had to do for this family." Derek needed that business opportunity. He needed to make the right impression with his wedding, to establish social connections. The lake property was an investment. The MBA was to recover from the business setback. "And what about me?" I asked, my voice finally cracking with emotion. "What about my future? My credit is destroyed. I cannot buy a home. I cannot get approved for an apartment lease. I might even lose my security clearance at work because of this financial issue. Did you ever think about that?" "We always meant to pay it back," my mother said tearfully. "We never thought it would affect you." "How could a $170,000 loan in my name not affect me?" I shouted, finally losing the calm I had been desperately clinging to. "How could destroying my credit not affect me? Were you planning to pay it all off before I ever needed to buy a car, rent an apartment, or purchase a home? You have always been the responsible one," my father said, repeating the phrase that now felt like the cruelest insult. "We knew you would figure it out." "Figure it out," I echoed in disbelief. "Figure out how to fix the financial crime you committed against me." Derek stood up, his face pale. "I had no idea, Bailey. I swear. I knew they were helping me financially, but I never asked where the money came from. I just assumed." "You assumed they could afford it," I finished for him. "You never questioned anything, because you have always been given everything." "Look," my father interjected, his tone shifting to one of forced reasonableness. "What is done is done. Getting lawyers involved will only tear this family apart. We can work something out." "I already cannot afford my property taxes this quarter," Derek admitted, looking uncomfortable. "But maybe in a few months." "Are you serious right now?" I asked, incredulous. "You live in a lake house and drive a vehicle that costs more than I make in a year, and you cannot pay your property taxes. Meanwhile, I am facing financial ruin because of a loan that funded your lifestyle." "Well, you do make good money in that computer job," my mother offered weakly. "Maybe you could take over the payments until we get back on our feet." That was the breaking point. The suggestion that I should accept responsibility for this fraudulent debt, that I should pay for the privilege of having my identity stolen by my own parents, unleashed a tidal wave of pent-up emotion. "I will not pay a single cent of this fraudulent debt," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "What you have done is not just morally wrong, it is a federal crime. You committed identity theft and fraud against your own son to benefit your other son. You chose Derek over me in every way possible throughout our lives, and this was just the most extreme example." I gathered the documents back into the folder with shaking hands. "You have two options. Option 1. You take full responsibility for this debt, get it out of my name completely, and make financial restitution for the damage to my credit. Option 2. I press charges for identity theft and fraud, and you face the legal consequences of your actions. You would send your own parents to jail." My father asked, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You would steal from your own son," I countered. I left the house with my family calling after me, begging me to reconsider, to think about what this would do to our family. The irony of their sudden concern for family unity was not lost on me. In their minds, family loyalty meant I should accept their betrayal silently, not that they should have refrained from betraying me in the first place. The following weeks were the darkest of my life. I consulted with lawyers about my options, filed police reports about the identity theft, and initiated the long, arduous process of trying to get the fraudulent loan discharged. My credit score, once an impressive 780, had plummeted to 520, making it impossible to rent a new apartment when my lease came up for renewal. I had to ask a colleague to co-sign just to secure basic housing. Depression hit me hard. I had always defined myself by my independence and self-sufficiency, and now I felt utterly vulnerable and violated. The betrayal by my own parents cut deeper than I could have imagined, reopening every childhood wound of feeling less valued than Derek. I withdrew from friends, found it difficult to concentrate at work, and spent many sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every family interaction and wondering if there had been signs I should have seen earlier. Rock bottom came when my security clearance at work was temporarily suspended, pending financial review, putting my career advancement in jeopardy. Everything I had worked for seemed to be crumbling around me, all because my parents had decided that Derek's desires were more important than my basic rights. The road to rebuilding my life began with a decision to approach my situation with the same methodical determination I applied to complex IT security problems. I could not control what my parents had done, but I could control my response and my path forward. The legal process was both challenging and vindicating. With detailed documentation and the support of a lawyer specializing in identity theft, I pursued both criminal and civil remedies. My parents were charged with identity theft and fraud charges that stunned our extended family and community. Many relatives could not believe that Richard and Linda Bailey, respected members of the community, could commit such an act against their own son. The criminal case resulted in a plea deal that kept my parents out of prison but placed them on probation with significant community service requirements. The civil case resulted in a judgment requiring them to take full responsibility for the fraudulent loan pay damages for the harm to my credit and cover my legal expenses. The court officially recognized that I had been the victim of identity theft, which was critical for the process of removing the fraudulent loan from my credit report. Throughout this difficult period, I discovered who my true support system was. Colleagues from work rallied around me with my team lead, Jake even offering his spare room when I was struggling to find housing. My friend Taylor, who I knew from college, spent countless hours helping me organize documents and accompanying me to legal appointments. These acts of kindness, from people who had no obligation to help me, contrasted sharply with my family's betrayal and helped restore my faith in human connections. A turning point came when I joined a support group for victims of identity theft and financial fraud. There I met others who had experienced similar betrayals, often by family members. Their stories helped me realize that I was not alone and that my anger and hurt were natural responses to a profound violation of trust. Through this group, I met Audrey, a financial advisor who specialized in helping people rebuild after financial trauma. Audrey not only provided professional guidance, but became a supportive presence in my life. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship and eventually something deeper. She understood my hypervigilance about financial matters and never made me feel unreasonable for the boundaries and safeguards I needed to feel secure again. The most difficult part of my journey was testifying against my parents in court, sitting on the witness stand, detailing their betrayal while they sat just feet away, was emotionally excruciating. My mother cried throughout my testimony, while my father stared straight ahead, his face a mask of stony resignation. Despite the pain, speaking my truth in that courtroom was a crucial step in reclaiming my power and identity. As the legal consequences became real for my parents, their attitude began to shift from defensiveness to genuine remorse. They lost standing in their community, faced significant financial penalties, and had to confront the harm they had caused. After the court proceedings concluded, my mother began sending letters apologizing for the damage they had done, not just with the loan, but with the lifetime of preferential treatment given to Derek. Derek himself went through a transformation during this period. The legal proceedings forced him to confront his role as the beneficiary of my parents' favoritism and fraud. When he fully understood the magnitude of what had been done in his name, he appeared genuinely horrified. In a move that surprised me, he sold his boat and leveraged some of his home equity to contribute toward the restitution payments my parents were required to make. I benefited from this situation, Even if I did not know where the money came from, he told me during a difficult conversation 6 months after the court case. I cannot undo that, but I can take responsibility for making it right now. It was a small step, but it represented a significant shift in our family dynamic. For perhaps the first time, Derek was being held accountable rather than protected and privileged. As I gradually rebuilt my financial life and credit score, I discovered an unexpected passion for financial education. My experience had taught me how vulnerable many people are to financial abuse and how little most people understand about protecting their financial identity. I began volunteering at community centers, teaching basic financial literacy classes with a special focus on protecting against identity theft. This volunteer work evolved into a foundation I created called Financial Shelter, dedicated to helping victims of family financial fraud. We provided resources, legal referrals, and emergency assistance to people whose financial identities had been stolen by family members, a surprisingly common and devastating form of betrayal. The foundation became a way to transform my painful experience into something that could help others, giving meaning to the suffering I had endured. 2 years after discovering the fraudulent loan, I achieved a symbolic victory by purchasing my first home, a modest but charming house in a small coastal Maine town. I had rebuilt my credit score to 740, saved a substantial down payment, and secured a mortgage on my own terms. The day I received the keys was emotional, representing not just a financial accomplishment, but a reclaiming of the future that had almost been stolen from me. My relationship with my family has been rebuilt on new terms, with boundaries that would have been unimaginable in our previous dynamic. I now require complete financial transparency in all family dealings, including an annual family meeting where financial matters are discussed openly. My parents have accepted these terms as part of their amends, understanding that trust, once broken so severely, can only be restored through consistent accountability. The greatest lesson I learned through this ordeal was about my own worth and the importance of setting boundaries even with family. For years, I had accepted my role as the less favored child, the one who was expected to be self-sufficient, while Derek received endless support. The discovery of the loan forced me to confront not just my parents' betrayal, but my own complicity in accepting unequal treatment. Today, I maintain relationships with my family, but they are relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My parents have done the difficult work of acknowledging their favoritism and its devastating consequences. Derek has grown into someone capable of taking responsibility rather than expecting rescue. And I have learned that standing up for myself is not selfish, but necessary, that my needs and rights matter just as much as anyone else's. If there is one message I hope others take from my story, it is the importance of recognizing your own value and refusing to accept treatment that undermines it, even from those closest to you. Financial betrayal by family is particularly devastating because it combines practical harm with profound emotional violation. Recovery requires both practical steps to restore financial health and emotional work to heal from the betrayal. Have you ever experienced financial betrayal by someone you trusted? How did you rebuild your life afterward? Your stories and experiences matter, and sharing them might help others facing similar challenges. Please like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life experiences that offer valuable lessons, and share with anyone who might benefit from knowing they are not alone in facing family financial betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that even after the deepest betrayal, it is possible to rebuild not just your credit score, but your sense of self-worth and your capacity for trust.